Picture this. You're sitting in a meeting and your boss asks for honest feedback about a failing project. Your heart starts racing. Your palms get sweaty. You have valuable insights that could save the project, but speaking up feels terrifying. What if you're wrong? What if they blame you? What if you look weak? This moment of choice happens to leaders every single day. And according to researcher Brené Brown, how you respond in these moments determines whether you become an ordinary manager or a truly daring leader. Today, we're diving deep into Brown's groundbreaking book, Dare to Lead, a research-backed playbook that's transformed how Fortune 500 companies, military units, and teams worldwide approach leadership. By the end of this summary, you'll have the tools to transform those moments of fear into opportunities for courage. Dare to Lead. Summary: a guide to brave leadership and courageous cultures. Introduction: why daring leadership matters now more than ever. What if you could transform your leadership style, build a more courageous team, and create a workplace culture where everyone feels safe, seen, and valued? In our rapidly changing world, traditional command and control leadership simply doesn't work anymore. Today's challenges require leaders who can navigate uncertainty, build trust across diverse teams, and inspire innovation in the face of constant change. This is where daring leadership comes in. It's not about being reckless or taking unnecessary risks. It's about having the courage to show up authentically, to have difficult conversations, and to create environments where people can do their best work. Have you ever struggled with having tough conversations at work? You're not alone, and we'll address exactly how to handle these situations throughout this summary. The research is clear. Organizations with daring leaders see higher levels of engagement, innovation, and performance. But more importantly, they create workplaces where people feel valued, heard, and empowered to contribute their best work. About Brené Brown and Dare to Lead. Brené Brown spent over 2 decades studying courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy as a research professor at the University of Houston. Her TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability, has been viewed over 60 million times, making it one of the most popular TED Talks ever. What makes Brown's work unique is that it's not based on opinion or theory. It's grounded in rigorous research involving thousands of interviews and surveys with leaders across industries. From Fortune 500 CEOs to military commanders to nonprofit directors. When she talks about leadership, she's sharing what actually works, not what sounds good in theory. In Dare to Lead, Brown defines a leader simply: anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes, and who has the courage to develop that potential. Notice she doesn't mention titles, corner offices, or years of experience. Leadership is about courage and responsibility, period. As Brown puts it, we desperately need more leaders who are committed to courageous, wholehearted leadership and who are self-aware enough to lead from their hearts, rather than their fears. The Journey to Daring Leadership, a 3-stage framework. To make this Dare to Lead summary easier to follow, we'll break it into 3 stages of courageous leadership. First, we'll explore the inner work of leadership, the personal courage, values, and vulnerability that Brené Brown says every daring leader must practice. Then we'll look at how to build trust and resilience with your team. Finally, we'll zoom out to see how these ideas scale into courageous organizational cultures. These 9 key takeaways take you on a journey from personal growth to transforming teams and entire workplaces. Story Shot 1. The 4 Pillars of Daring Leadership. Brené Brown's Leadership Skills. Brown's research identified 4 core skills that separate daring leaders from everyone else. The good news? These skills are completely teachable and measurable. Think of them as the foundation of courageous leadership. Pillar 1. Rumbling with vulnerability. This means having the courage to show up when you can't control the outcome. A rumble is Brown's term for staying in difficult conversations instead of avoiding them. It's about leaning into discomfort rather than running from it. Rumbling with vulnerability doesn't mean oversharing or being inappropriate. It means being honest about what you don't know, admitting when you've made a mistake, and asking for help when you need it. It's the foundation of authentic leadership. Pillar 2. Living into our values. Daring leaders don't just talk about their values. They use them as a compass for every decision. As Brown puts it, daring leaders who live into their values are never silent about hard things. This means getting crystal clear about what you stand for and then having the courage to act on those values, even when it's difficult or unpopular. It's about integrity in action, not just words on a wall. Pillar 3. Braving trust. Trust isn't built through grand gestures. It's earned in small, everyday moments through what Brown calls the braving framework, which we'll explore in detail. Trust is the foundation of all effective relationships, and it's especially crucial in leadership. Without trust, teams can't collaborate effectively, innovation suffers, and people become disengaged. Pillar 4. Learning to rise. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's part of success. Daring leaders have a systematic approach to bouncing back from setbacks and turning failures into learning opportunities. This isn't about being resilient for resilience's sake. It's about developing the skills to learn from failure, adapt quickly, and help your team do the same. These 4 pillars work together like the legs of a chair. Remove one, and the whole structure becomes unstable. Story Shot 2. Mental Models for Daring Leadership. Shifting Mindsets for Courage. To truly understand daring leadership, you need to shift your mental models about how leadership works. Here are the key mindset changes Brown's research reveals. Mental Model 1. Vulnerability as strength. Old model. Leaders should have all the answers and never show weakness. New model. Vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. Think of vulnerability like a muscle. The more you exercise it in safe environments, the stronger it becomes when you really need it. Leaders who can be vulnerable create psychological safety for their teams, which leads to higher performance and innovation. Mental Model 2. Trust as a process. Old model. Trust is either there or it isn't. New model. Trust is built through small, consistent actions over time. Brown uses the metaphor of a marble jar. Every time someone does something trustworthy, they earn a marble. When they break trust, marbles come out. Trust is the accumulation of marbles over time, not a single event. Mental Model 3. Failure as data. Old model. Failure is something to avoid at all costs. New model. Failure is feedback that helps you course correct. Daring leaders reframe failure as expensive learning. The goal isn't to avoid failure, but to fail fast, learn quickly, and apply those lessons. This creates a culture where people are willing to take smart risks. Mental Model 4. Courage as contagious. Old model. Courage is an individual trait. New model. When one person chooses courage, it gives others permission to be brave too. This is why daring leadership has such a powerful ripple effect throughout organizations. One person's courage can transform an entire team's culture. Story Shot 3. Rumbling with vulnerability. Debunking the myths about leadership and fear. The biggest barrier to daring leadership is our misunderstanding of vulnerability. Brown identified 6 myths that keep us armored up and prevent us from leading courageously. Myth 1. Vulnerability is weakness. Reality. Vulnerability is actually our most accurate measure of courage. This is perhaps the most damaging myth because it keeps leaders from being authentic and human. In reality, it takes tremendous courage to admit you don't have all the answers, to ask for help, or to acknowledge a mistake. Example: a CEO who admits to their leadership team that they're struggling with a major decision and asks for input isn't showing weakness. They're demonstrating the courage to be human and the wisdom to leverage their team's collective intelligence. The science. Brown's research shows that vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. When leaders model vulnerability, it creates psychological safety that allows teams to take risks and innovate. Myth 2. I don't do vulnerability. Reality. We all experience vulnerability. The only choice is how we respond to it. Many leaders believe they can avoid vulnerability altogether, but this is impossible. Vulnerability is part of the human experience. The question isn't whether you'll experience it, but how you'll respond when you do. Example: a manager who never admits uncertainty might think they're avoiding vulnerability, but their team can sense the facade. This creates distance and mistrust. Meanwhile, a leader who says, "I'm not sure about this decision, let's think it through together," is being vulnerable in a way that builds connection and trust. The impact. When leaders try to avoid vulnerability, they often become disconnected from their teams and miss opportunities for genuine connection and collaboration. Myth 3. I can go it alone. Reality. Connection and support are essential for sustainable leadership. The myth of the lone wolf leader is not only outdated, but dangerous. Leadership is inherently relational, and trying to do it alone leads to burnout, poor decisions, and isolation. Example: a department head who tries to solve every problem themselves without consulting their team or peers might think they're being strong and independent. In reality, they're missing out on valuable perspectives and setting themselves up for failure. The research. Studies consistently show that leaders with strong support networks and collaborative relationships are more effective, more resilient, and more successful over the long term. Myth 4. You can engineer uncertainty out of vulnerability. Reality. Uncertainty is inherent to vulnerability. The goal is learning to be comfortable with discomfort. Many leaders try to control every variable and eliminate uncertainty before taking action. But vulnerability, by definition, involves uncertainty and emotional risk. The goal isn't to eliminate these feelings, but to develop the capacity to act courageously despite them. Example: a project manager who delays launching a new initiative until they have 100% certainty about the outcome will never launch anything. A daring leader launches with 70% certainty and adjusts course as they learn. The skill. Developing comfort with uncertainty is a learnable skill. It involves practicing mindfulness, building emotional regulation skills, and reframing uncertainty as opportunity rather than threat. Myth 5. Trust comes before vulnerability. Reality. Vulnerability is the path to trust, not the result of it. Many people believe they need to trust someone before they can be vulnerable with them. Brown's research shows the opposite is true. Vulnerability builds trust. When you're vulnerable with someone and they respond with empathy and support, trust grows. Example: a team leader who shares a personal struggle or professional challenge with their team, appropriately, often finds that team members respond by sharing their own challenges. This mutual vulnerability builds trust and connection. The process. Trust and vulnerability work together in a positive cycle. Small acts of vulnerability lead to small increases in trust, which enable slightly bigger acts of vulnerability, and so on. Myth 6. Vulnerability is oversharing. Reality. Vulnerability is sharing with people who have earned the right to hear your story. There's an important distinction between vulnerability and oversharing. Vulnerability is strategic and boundaried. It's about sharing appropriate information with people who have demonstrated that they can handle it with care. Example, sharing your struggles with addiction in a job interview is oversharing. Sharing with your team that you're going through a difficult time and might need some flexibility is appropriate vulnerability. The boundaries. Effective vulnerability requires clear boundaries about what to share, with whom, and when. It's not about sharing everything with everyone. It's about being authentic and human in appropriate ways. Understanding these myths helps you recognize when you're operating from fear instead of courage and gives you permission to lead more authentically. What's one way you can practice rumbling with vulnerability this week? Think about a conversation you've been avoiding and consider how you might approach it differently. Share the story with the Story Shots community by writing a comment on Spotify or our website. Stage 2. Building trust and resilience with your team. Now that we've tackled the inner work, values, vulnerability, and shifting old leadership mindsets, it's time to look outward. Daring leadership doesn't stop with you. It's about how you build trust, support your team, and bounce back from failure together. Story Shot 4. The Braving Trust Framework. How leaders build trust. Step by step. Trust is the foundation of all effective relationships, but most people can't clearly define what trust means. Brown's Braving Framework gives us a concrete way to understand and build trust. B stands for boundaries, respecting what's okay and what's not okay. This means being clear about your own boundaries and respecting others' boundaries. It also means being willing to say no when necessary and not taking on more than you can handle. R. Reliability. Doing what you say you'll do. This is about consistency and follow-through. It means being aware of your competencies and limitations so you don't overpromise and can deliver on your commitments. A. Accountability. Owning mistakes and making amends. When you mess up, you own it, apologize, and make it right. This builds trust because people know you'll take responsibility for your actions. V. Vault. Keeping confidences and not sharing what isn't yours to share. This means maintaining confidentiality and not gossiping. People need to know that what they share with you in confidence will stay with you. I stands for integrity. Choosing courage over comfort. This is about practicing your values rather than just professing them. It means doing the right thing even when it's difficult. N. Non-judgment, creating space for people to ask for help. This means responding to people's struggles and mistakes with empathy rather than judgment. It creates psychological safety. G. Generosity, assuming positive intent in others' actions. This means extending the most generous interpretation possible to others' intentions, words, and actions. It gives people the benefit of the doubt. Here's the key insight. Trust is built in drops and lost in buckets. It takes time to build but can be destroyed quickly. However, trust can also be rebuilt if both parties are willing to do the work. Use this framework to audit your relationships. Where are you strong? Where do you need work? Most importantly, which element do you need to focus on first? What's one thing you can do this week to build trust with your team? Consider which element of braving needs the most attention in your leadership. Story Shot 5. Learning to Rise After Failure. Brené Brown's 3-step resilience process. Failure is inevitable in leadership. What separates daring leaders is how they respond to setbacks. Brown outlines a 3-step process for learning to rise. Step 1. The reckoning. This is about recognizing and acknowledging your emotions. When something goes wrong, most people either suppress their feelings or get overwhelmed by them. Daring leaders get curious about what they're feeling and why. The reckoning involves asking yourself, what am I feeling right now? What's happening in my body? What emotions am I experiencing? This emotional awareness is the foundation of resilience. Step 2. The rumble. This is where you examine the story you're telling yourself about what happened. Our brains are wired to create narratives, but these stories are often incomplete or inaccurate. The rumble is about separating facts from the stories we make up. Key questions for the rumble include, what story am I making up about this situation? What are the facts versus my assumptions? What's my role in this? What can I learn from this experience? Step 3. The revolution. This is about writing a new ending based on what you've learned. It's taking the lessons from your failure and using them to create a better outcome next time. The revolution involves asking, how can I use what I've learned to do better next time? What changes do I need to make? How can I share these lessons with others? This process transforms failure from something that happens to you into something you can learn from and grow through. Story Shot 6. The Arena and Your Square Squad. Choosing feedback that builds courage. Brown frequently references Theodore Roosevelt's "Man in the Arena" speech. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. The arena represents any space where you're being vulnerable and taking risks. The cheap seats are filled with people who criticize but don't take risks themselves. This is where your square squad becomes crucial. These are the small group of people whose opinions matter to you. People who are also in the arena, taking risks and being vulnerable. They've earned the right to give you feedback because they understand what it's like to dare greatly. Building your square squad is essential because you need people who will tell you the truth, support you when you fall, and celebrate your courage. Stage 3. Scaling courage across your organization. Once you've built trust and resilience with your closest circle, the next step is scaling that courage across your organization. Here we'll contrast armored versus daring leadership styles and explore the tools that create psychological safety and innovative, courageous cultures. Story Shot 7. Armored versus daring leadership. Fear-based versus courage-based leadership styles. Brown contrasts two approaches to leadership, armored and daring. Armored leadership operates from fear and includes perfectionism that creates anxiety and stifles innovation, control and micromanagement that disempowers teams, numbing emotions through distractions or workaholism, cynicism and sarcasm as protection from vulnerability. Daring leadership operates from courage and includes empathy and genuine connection with team members, curiosity and openness to learning and growth, grounded confidence based on self-awareness and values, courage and resilience in facing challenges and setbacks. The choice between these approaches happens moment by moment, conversation by conversation. Each time you choose courage over comfort, you're practicing daring leadership. Story Shot 8. Practical Tools for Difficult Conversations. Brené Brown's Rumble Starters. One of the most practical applications of daring leadership is having difficult conversations. Here are Brown's key tools. The container. Before any tough conversation, create a container by setting clear intentions for the conversation, agreeing on ground rules, no interrupting, assume positive intent, ensuring privacy and adequate time, getting consent from all participants, rumble starters. Use these phrases to begin difficult conversations. I'm curious about, tell me more about, help me understand. The story I'm making up is, what does that look like from your perspective? The turn and learn. This simple exercise builds connection by having people share stories about courage, failure, or values. It creates psychological safety before diving into harder topics. Remember, the goal isn't to win the conversation, but to understand each other and find a path forward. What's one difficult conversation you've been avoiding? How might you use these tools to approach it with courage this week? Story Shot 9. Creating Psychological Safety. Building Courageous and Innovative Cultures. Psychological safety, the belief that you can speak up without risk of punishment or humiliation, is essential for high-performing teams. Daring leaders create this safety by modeling vulnerability. When leaders admit mistakes and uncertainties, it gives others permission to do the same. Responding to failure with curiosity. Instead of blame, ask, what can we learn from this? Encouraging questions. Make it safe for people to ask questions and admit when they don't understand something. Celebrating learning. When someone learns something new, even through failure, celebrate that growth. Building a culture of courage doesn't happen overnight. It's created through thousands of small interactions and choices over time. But when you create this environment, you see higher levels of innovation, engagement, and resilience throughout your organization. Implementation Guide, your 30-day Daring Leadership Challenge. Knowing about daring leadership and practicing it are two different things. Here's your step-by-step implementation guide. Week 1, Foundation Building. Days 1 to 2, identify your top 2 core values and define what they look like in action. Days 3 to 4, assess your current square squad. Who are the people whose opinions matter to you? Days 5 to 7, practice vulnerability in small ways. Admit when you don't know something, ask for help, or share an appropriate struggle. Week 2, Trust Building. Days 8 to 10, use the Braving Framework to evaluate one important relationship. Days 11 to 12, focus on reliability. Make and keep small promises consistently. Days 13 to 14, practice accountability. When you make a mistake, own it quickly and completely. Week 3, Rumbling Practice. Days 15 to 17, have one slightly difficult conversation using Rumble starters. Days 18 to 19, when something goes wrong, practice the story I'm making up technique. Days 20 to 21, create a container for a team conversation about psychological safety. Week 4, Rising Strong. Days 22 to 24, share a failure story with your team and what you learned from it. Days 25 to 26, practice the reckoning, rumble, revolution process after any setback. Days 27 to 30, celebrate courage in others regardless of outcome. Daily practices, morning question. How will I choose courage over comfort today? Evening reflection. What did I learn about myself as a leader today? Weekly values check. Am I living into my values or just professing them? Key takeaways and your next steps. Daring leadership isn't about being fearless. It's about feeling the fear and choosing courage anyway. It's about showing up authentically, building trust through small actions, and creating environments where people can do their best work. The 4 pillars, rumbling with vulnerability, living into values, braving trust, and learning to rise, work together to create leaders who inspire others to be brave too. Remember Brown's powerful insight. Courage is contagious. Every time we choose courage, we make everyone around us a little braver too. Your journey to daring leadership starts with a single choice to be vulnerable, to have that difficult conversation, to admit when you don't know something, or to own a mistake. Each small act of courage builds your capacity for bigger acts of bravery. The arena is waiting. The question isn't whether you'll face challenges, It's whether you'll face them with courage or hide behind armor. Choose courage. Choose to dare greatly. Your team, your organization, and the world need more daring leaders. What is the one thing you will do differently after listening to this summary? Share your commitment in the comments below, and let's support each other on this journey to daring leadership. Further reading and resources: Brené Brown's website, Dare to Lead Hub, The Power of Vulnerability, TED Talk. Buy Dare to Lead on Amazon. Related book summaries: The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown, Daring Greatly by Brené Brown, Rising Strong by Brené Brown, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, Start with Why by Simon Sinek,